Hello, Magic Hour friends. I wanted to let you know about an exciting contest that's starting today. Imagining Flora, Fauna, and Beasts is a design challenge in partnership with Treasure DAO, Digistrats, Magic Hour Pod, and OpenArt, which is kind of like the Google search for AI artwork. On OpenArt, you can search for artwork based on keywords you type in, and you can also create your own artwork using credits. Each art generation costs zero point 0.1 credit, and you can get 20 free credits to start with. They also give out daily credits on their Discord, so join up. The idea of the challenge is to reimagine what other life potentially exists within Bridgeworld. As you know, we've already seen what harvesters look like. We have all the terrains and the questing and the treasures that we craft. But what about the other creatures in Bridgeworld? What about the flowers? The goal of the challenge is to imagine what these creatures and flowers, the flora and fauna, if you will, look like and can be found in Bridgeworld. What happens if you win this contest? Well, there are 3 winners that will be chosen purely via community voting. Each winner will receive 250 magic tokens and 500 OpenArt credits, which is equivalent to about 5,000 generations on OpenArt's website. Also remember to tweet your artwork with the hashtag BridgeworldAIArt to get a chance to win a Legion. The challenge will end on the 1st of November, so you have a week to submit your entries. To learn more, visit digistrats.com/magicai, and this link will be in the tweet below. Coming at you all the way from Arbitrum, it's the Magic Hour Podcast.
This is Alan.
Dionysus.
And Braiker. Produced by Digital Strategies Guild. Well, I got the recording going, so I guess I should introduce you first. Magic Hour listeners, I have on BigHeadBear this afternoon. He is doing the Realmoor's podcast. If you haven't heard that yet, it's on Spotify. I highly encourage you to check it out. The quality is amazing. If you're big into Realm, which I think a lot of our fans are, definitely check it out. But thanks for coming on the pod, dude. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been a big fan of y'all's podcast for a long time. I remember when it started and I was like, this is like a genius idea. There has to be someone covering it, right? News, media. Media needs to exist in forms like outside of Twitter and just, communication, like need to be able to tell stories and bring this stuff to life. So I really appreciate what y'all have done and have done for the space. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to have you on as well. I don't want this to turn into an interview because I want to, have some like great casual conversation. But, for the listeners out there, I do want to know how did you get into, I guess, Web3 and treasure and magic, and how did you come across this little niche of the web, as we call it?
Yeah, this tiny niche of the magic web and the Web3. I got into like Web3 and blockchain through a buddy of mine that's been into it for like 7 or 8 years now. And he kept telling me about it for years, and I just didn't really understand it. I wasn't enough into it. I was kind of in my own workspace. And finally, after convincing me and sending me articles on the technology and, the potential future application, I got really interested. Just kind of messed around with trading, basic coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, BNB, stuff like that for a long time. And then one of my buddies came to me and was like, hey, I think I have a really good play. It's this coin I found that's still tiny, and it's a derivative of this thing called loot. I had no idea what that was either. But I remember he sent me, I can't find it anymore, but it was John Patton's original article on treasure. Like, I can't find it. It has the pictures of the old Genesis legions and all that, but it was more of like an esoteric writing about like the potential of NFTs and the potential of a reserve currency connecting an economy. And that was the thing that hooked me, was seeing this vision applied that actually seemed logical and necessary and possible. And I bought my first like small bag of magic about 4 hours after it came to Arbitrum. And just with that JP article, I was hooked. And then I joined Discord like 2 hours after the Small Brains like mint application ended, like the draw thing. I literally got on Discord and found it, and it was like closed 2 hours ago, application for mint. So I did buy my first Small Brains and my first Swoles, and I got some seeds in there, but I just fell in love with the idea of the infrastructure and the idea, the whole shape of the idea versus, hey, we're just going to have one project that maybe does this. It was more looking at the company side of it and the underlying economy, which to me is the piece that can make something last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years is the underlying concept, the proof of concept. And to me, I just saw it and I was like, someone's going to do this. It's either going to be Magic or a bigger company, but I'd like to be invested in it. I'd like to be a part of it. And then I found Realm on the big mint out date when all the social media influencers were pushing it. And I just stayed in the Discord. And I liked it so much. I've always wanted to do a podcast, and I decided to do it. I guess it's as simple as that. Where like everything else, it's like at the end of the day, I just sat down in front of a computer, wrote some stuff, and started recording. And that was 4 months ago, and here we are now.
Yeah, man, that's definitely a common story for sure. And yeah, I remember that John Patton article that you're referencing, and I think I didn't read it so much as I was already I was in a Discord channel that I don't know if you remember End. He was one of
Yeah.
the guy who originally conceived the idea for, I guess, the Bridge World lore or how it was going to work. But when he was in Discord, he kept pushing us to buy the treasure bags. He's like, come on, this is going to be good. You guys should get in on this. And so a bunch of us ended up buying some treasure bags in this channel. And then, I just kept following and I just held my bags and, I did the whole I guess the bridge and,
Oh,
I got all my
you
legions.
did like the single-sided staking and the
Yeah,
bridge.
yeah,
And
yeah.
were you early enough to get free magic from like staking an N
Yeah.
project NFT?
Yeah. I ended up getting
Congratulations.
like 12,000 magic initially, which albeit it wasn't a lot because I didn't buy many treasure bags. I wish I did in hindsight, but it's it was so tough at that time. Like there were just so many different projects. It's not like you wanted to go like all in on one. Like
Mm,
I did Anonymice, and listeners will know that I've told the story before, but Anonymice was one of my favorite experiences in Web3, and I was kind of like really focused on them and not really like getting as deep into other projects.
mm,
Hindsight 2020, like obviously it would have been better to jump into this full
mm.
bore, but the guy from Anonymice is the mouse dev is now part of the treasure team or
Yep.
advising them, or consulting with them. So I guess time is a circle, right?
Yes, yes, it is time's a circle.
But yeah, no, I mean, I didn't get any smalls. I also missed out on the small mint, which is sad, but at the same time, it is what it is. I'm
Mhm,
not like bent out of shape over it. I think that there's just so much great stuff in the treasure space in general that there's room for everybody and there's a lot of opportunity. Like some of the things that I've been seeing lately that I'm really excited about are this Hovercats project that
mhm.
right now they're doing these crossword puzzles, these daily crossword puzzles, which are really very interesting. I think we're gonna have the Beacon guys on in a couple weeks, so that's
Yeah.
keep an eye out for that. I think I've been playing Ether Orcs, and Ether Orcs is like this dungeon crawler turn-based situation that's I think pretty well done,
Mhm.
and I'm hoping that the Beacon kind of gives you that same style of gameplay because right now there's not a lot of real gameplay that I can
Mhm.
see aside from the Battlefly Racer, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think part of it is, we talk about it in the Realm Discord. Like, part of the thing is, like, there are games, but nobody is really defined. Like, there isn't a game that you can, like, win, right? Where, like, you download Civ, you download World of Warcraft, like, you download all this stuff, and it's like, hey, if you want to be the best, like, here is a clear cut path, right? Which allows for easier strategy play, like, easier communication. It allows to create storylines and create these myths and bring other people in. And just right now, there really isn't like a game you can play to like win, if that makes sense. I love
It
Realm and
does.
I think it's on its way there. And obviously there's a lot of stuff to like hook us now. I'm a big like strategy role-playing game like Civ 6 and Total War,
Mhm.
and Europa Universalis and stuff like that. And so that's why I love it, because I see those pieces there. But yes, there isn't like correctly what you said. I don't think there's a lot of like gameplay, but I will say I do a lot of those planet crosswords. I do really enjoy it. Like I spend a lot of time on the OpenSea or the Trove like NFT and playing those crossword puzzles because I love crossword puzzles. So shout out to Planet Crossword. Thank you for that. I've actually been enjoying those every single day.
Yeah, shout out to Planet Crossword. So actually, before we get into that for a second, I can play it in the Brave browser. Is it just me, or does it not work in Brave?
I'm not sure. I use Brave like mostly for like other things. I don't really like I use it for some of my Ledger stuff, but like when it just comes to like playing a game in Hot Wallet, I'm usually on Google Chrome.
Hmm.
So I'm not 100% positive. I haven't been on Brave in a while, but I can see just knowing how it works that may be a little bit of a problem. But
Mm.
again, I'm not 100% positive.
It's okay. I mean, I definitely want to play them, so I'm gonna check that out because I too am a big crossword geek. I do this
Nice.
Times crossword every
Yeah,
week.
you get lost, and I know like a lot of them are people that make them for the New York Times. The first one they released was actually, if you ever seen, there's a YouTube video on Vanity Fair where the guy who's a magician and a writer explains how he makes a crossword for the New York Times. I think he was one of their first contributors.
No, I did not see that video, but I'm interested. So
Yeah,
send
it's
me the link
really
when you
really
have a
cool,
chance.
really cool.
Definitely look into that one. That's cool. So let me ask about Realm since you do the Realmer podcast. How did
Yeah.
you like what drew you into Realm and what do you like about Realm and I mean you're probably more into it than I am. What's going on? Give me a little bit of an update here
Yeah.
from
Let
your
me
point
uh
of view.
let me dish some hot tea, anything I got on me.
Mhm.
I fell into Realm just like I said, the hype, I think it was like February of this year when, everyone went crazy on Twitter. It was minting out. I was able to mint one, and then I went into the Discord. I started talking to like Topper and Therapy and Jonah and all these. Some were on the team at the time, some aren't anymore. But the more we talked, the more I started seeing like the potential for, how do I put this? Like a game that is from the mind of one person to start, right? Like a Stardew Valley or like a Prison Architect or RimWorld. I'm big fans of those games, and I think there is a benefit to having one person controlling the vision. And it seemed to me like the more I listened to AMAs with Jonah, who is the creator, programmer, everything, the more I listened to his
He's a
AMAs.
machine.
Hmm?
He's a machine, Jonah.
Oh, he's an absolute machine. It is there's nonstop updates, and obviously being a one person company is going to hinder you depending on your product, but to me it always seemed like he had a very realistic vision for what he could get done. And my little bit of background working in like building businesses, to me for a lot of these projects I was looking at who can realistically execute on their set expectations, because I hate to break this to most people, but building a game is insanely time intensive and insanely expensive. And it takes a lot of hours from not just anybody, but competent people, which in an industry that's growing is incredibly hard to find. Hiring is arguably the hardest part in a new sector. And
Mm.
so what I started seeing was like the vision that this person, Jonah, is setting forward. And it seems like the expectations that they have is realistic within his skill set and within the time and what he wants to build. And that's part of the reason I latched on, is because I saw, yes, this can last. Like this can continue to deliver on product. And in my opinion, he hasn't stopped. No, it isn't perfect, right? Yes, there have been some, discussions in the Discord of whether this was the right move or not. But at the end of the day, I can't complain that he's continuing to listen to his audience. He's continuing to put forth product. He's continuing to ship. He's continuing to put new stuff out. And at the end of the day, in a tech business, I think that's the best thing you can possibly do. So what has kept me there is the stories, is the people, is the gameplay. But what got me into it was seeing a business plan and vision that seems realistic to execute within the scope of what they wanted. Like I could see his vision was possible.
Right.
And that's what hooked me on, because Bridge World, all this stuff, I love it and I know it can be done, but it requires a lot of time and a lot of people and a lot of coordination versus one person getting to do what they want to do. And I find it fun. I love the community. It's great in there. You can always get help. I love strategy. I got my spreadsheets. I got my math equations. I got all that stuff. And that's enough to keep me stimulated for a very long time.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Like he set out this vision and he doesn't overpromise.
Mm-hmm.
He just slowly iterates, increments, just steadily adds to it and says, "Okay, this is going to be the next phase," and just focuses on that. Doesn't really go beyond that too much. And I really like that. I mean, now he's talking about more active activities. I hope that means like more active gameplay kind of situation. I've
Mm-hmm.
been the exploring and questing lately because I stopped kind of paying attention to a lot of things during the bear right off the bat.
Yeah.
I had some other stuff going on and I was just kind of doing my own thing. But now that people like yourself and more people are coming back to the space, I feel like, okay, I gotta learn these things. I gotta know what's going on. I gotta be familiar with them. So I've started playing Bridge World again. I've started playing Realm.
Ooh, how many realms do you have?
I have 5 realms.
You have 5 realms?
I
Dude,
have
that's
5 realms.
amazing.
Yeah, I
That's
have 5 realms,
amazing.
but I mean, I don't have any refineries or any of that stuff yet. I'm just learning again, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I have 6 adventures of the void,
Mm-hmm.
and I have them all exploring one of my realms, which has a metropolis on it that I bought off of Trove, and I just have them questing right now, and I'm just kind of slowly getting back into it so that like, yeah, I mean, obviously if there's activity here, then the
Mm-hmm.
realms are going to be valuable. I want to keep building them up however I can.
Yeah. How many resources do you like, total resources on your realm that your adventurers are exploring?
Okay, so okay, this is good because I'm like not very clear on the right strategies in this game.
Okay.
By the way, I like I like the UI
Hmm.
for Realm, but I feel, and this is not a knock on you guys, Realm. I love you. I think what you're doing is great. But I'm gonna Monday morning quarterback a little bit and say
Hmm.
it's just a little too cluttered for me. I don't know where I should be looking half the time.
Yeah. No, I honestly I agree, and this is something that like it's obviously Jonah's call in the end, but
Mhm.
like the community, a lot of the changes to the UI have be because the community comes in there and makes suggestions, and it's definitely something that is discussed a lot. He's talked about putting like a help button in there somewhere,
Mhm.
right? And just giving people more of an overlay of the UI, because yes, it can be a lot to navigate. There's a lot going on. Hoping that as more paths unfold, it'll get a little simpler. But yes, stuff is a little bit all over the place.
Mhm.
And there's a lot on the screen. But yeah, he's trying. But yes, it's a very, very valid criticism, because someone like me who's been doing it for months, I go on the screen, right? I've seen it. I know what it is. I know where everything is. But yes, for someone new,
Mhm.
it can definitely be a lot.
Right. So back to your question, you were asking about how many natural resources do I have?
Mm-hmm.
So like on my main one, which aptly is called Breakerton,
Nice.
I have 781 and a population of 70, and I have 60 out of
Yeah.
70 explorers, which I guess is the six.
Yes. Yes.
And then
So go ahead.
I have
Sorry.
another one with 716 natural resources, 712, and then two ones with like 600 and the other ones with like 360.
Nice. Okay, so
Yeah.
you have your adventures exploring your highest natural resource realm, correct?
Right, right, right.
Okay, so yeah, that's ideal. I mean, I know there's going to be more ways that it opens to promote, people going to AOVs going to other realms and not just
Mhm.
your own, but yes, right now the smartest strategy is to put your adventures on your highest resource realm. That way, your realm can collect more particle from the AOVs, right? Because
Right.
essentially, yes, the realm generates particle based on how many AOVs are on it, multiplied by in a certain equation 0.002 per resource
Mm-hmm.
on your realm, right? So and then the AOV collects it, and then the AOV collects their share and the realm share, right? So you
Right.
can't actually get particle if you don't have an AOV. So the
Right.
AOV is doing everything, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can use it for questing, or if you have a realm, you can use the particle to manufacture and produce collectibles as well, which are essentially the building blocks of the Realmverse right now.
Right. Now, I see with the magic refinery, I can have a magic refinery earning magic. Is that yield? Am I yield farming?
So yes, the thing that I will say is, so obviously, there's rankings with the magic tier, right? There's 1 through 3 and then 4 through 6. 1 through 3 are in the Atlas mine. They're smaller amounts. So a tier 1 is 100 magic locked up, tier 2 is 250, and tier 3 is 500. After a year since they were minted, it was about 3 or 4 months ago, you would get 90% of that back if you hold the refinery. 4 through 6, that is Realms magic in the harvesters, I believe, in collaboration with Life DAO.
Mm-hmm.
And so tier 4s, they were minted for 1,000 magic, tier 5s for 3,500, and tier 6s for 10,000 magic. Now
Wow.
you can sell it on the marketplace, or at the end of every month, there's about a 36 to 48 hour window where you can burn it and get everything you put back into it.
Wow. Okay.
So, so if you look on like the leaderboard page, yes, you can get a yield for just attaching the refinery and doing nothing, right? I think it's
Mm-hmm.
around 20% APY. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll still make something decent, but if you want to get higher up, you have to climb the leaderboards, which requires building and or staking. So for T4 through 6, because that's a scoreboard that resets every month and it starts over, it's based off of building. So when you want to build something, you need to, look in the docs and see, okay, I want to build a town 1. That requires 10 common collectibles, the prime one, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
right now technology. So you go build that, you build it, you get the population credit on T4. And then if you have a tier 1 through 3, you go stake it on that and you get the population for staking on those. So in order to compete, you either have to make collectibles and burn them to turn them into cities or monuments and build
Mm-hmm.
and stake those, or you can buy them from the marketplace and stake them for 1 through 3. So yes, you can yield farm. And I know last year T3 or T6, sorry, the big one, like the 3,300 magic at winnings, was won by Soma, who's arguably the player that's been around the longest in Realm. Even Jonah has said that when there was like 50 people that owned Realms, he was the only one collecting and like playing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I know they spent like a lot of magic to get up to that point, like a few thousand to win the 3,300. So, yes, it is yield farming in a sense, but you will have to play. You will have to work. You will have to work on your strategy. You will have to check what other people are doing to try to time them trying to snipe the position from you. So, while I would like to say, yes, it's yield farming and you can definitely do that, I will be spending a little bit of magic to make it happen for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I have some magic to spend, of course,
Mm.
but I'm gonna be honest with you. Just hearing you describe all this, it sounds so complicated. Not, I mean, I guess complicated is not the right word. There's just so much going on that like I have to pull out like a spreadsheet and
Yes.
like
Yeah. And
and
you know
I could
you're
see how I could see where it touches the game style that you like that you
Mhm.
described. Absolutely. But it's a lot.
Oh, dude, it's so much. And I think this is kind of where I mentioned like the idea of winning, right? The path to winning will become clear because if you look at it, it's no more complicated than like a Civ 6, right? Or like a Sims or like any of these. It's just there's a lot of variables, but typically in a game like Civ 6, right? There's like a few ways to win, right? By culture, by total domination, right? By like science, and then I believe there's one more. And so
Mhm.
when you set out to do your strategy, obviously there's a million variables, but you can kind of sideline them based on what your focus is. Right.
Right.
So it's like, okay, there's these million tree things, but I know I want to go for this. And right now, because it's being released in phases and there isn't really a, hey, here's exactly where we're going, we've been like working with people in the Discord on like defining a path, right? So it's like there's three things you can do. You can like produce, build, or sell,
Right.
right? Like the easiest way, you can produce collectibles and sell them. You can produce collectibles and build and then sell those, or you can produce, build, stake, compete.
Mhm.
But because it's not like, oh, hey, no, monuments are the way to go. Oh, no, cities are the way to go. Oh, no, AOVs combined with this, it's hard to like take a piece of paper and be like, here's your path, because it's kind of again what we talked about is this is sometimes the hindrance part of having one person working on everything,
Mhm.
right? Like while it is great that you can ship whatever you want, this is where you get in discussions of like, hey, if you did have two or three more people, would a little bit more stuff be able to come out at one time that would make these paths clearer?
Right.
So for me it's one of those trade-offs that you take, but that's why we always urge people like come into the Discord, come talk, ask us questions, hang out. But it's a very, very, very valid critique. And as Realm, like as all of us in it are constantly trying to find a way to make this more and more explainable. And I'm really hoping Tempest, who did Treasure Hunt, I believe recently got realm.treasurehunt.lol up, and even that is already going to help a lot in terms of
Mhm.
explaining paths to do. But yeah, your criticism is it's very valid, and I know Jonah welcomes it. Everyone in the Discord does. And it's something, yeah, we're working on constantly. I wish I had like a really simple way to make this like sexy and like clean and like, hey, you do this and you're a beast like 5 months later.
No,
But
it's perfectly fine, and honestly, it's going somewhere, and he's building something, and there are people playing it, so I can't really be mad because at the end of the day, it's all about you know bringing value to the Magic ecosystem.
Mhm.
Because to me, what will bring value in anything especially in anything in Web3, I should say, is a network effect. Lots of
Mhm.
volume. There just needs to be volume in order for there to be activity, because you can't have dexes if there's no activity.
Mhm.
You can't have a token if no one's trading it. It has no value, right? So the
Yep.
value has to be based upon the network effect. So if people are playing Realm, that's great. If people are playing Toadstools, awesome. Smalls, Bridge World, all these things together, and this is why John Patton's vision of this Nintendo for
Mhm.
Web3 is so great, because there's value in all these different pockets, even though may not be big themselves, but together they're much more than they are individually.
Exactly. And I think what you said is such a great point, because that's what I remember about like John Patton's like early article that we were talking about, was that he spoke a lot about like his vision was like the players against the protocol, right? So it was the players, you're fighting like the protocol, which I think has started to somewhat translate into like you fight the regulation, right? The changes when they nerf things, right? Like whatever it is. And I know Pete has talked about corruption and all this stuff, but that original article is talking a lot about like the players are need to going to work together to overcome what the protocol and the DAO and whoever's behind it is shipping out. And I always thought that was great. And that's something I feel like Realmers have rallied around is like, hey, we're playing and essentially against Jonah and the updates he ships, right? Like everybody here can benefit by being on the same page. And we have some sub guilds in there, but for the most part, I believe in sharing strategy, right? Because we are trying to overcome the curveballs that Jonah throws at us, whether it's, hey, we're changing this, or hey, we're shipping this new product or this new structure that'll factor in this way. And it's us coming together to figure out how we can best work together to make this work for everybody, to conquer the curveballs that are being thrown at us. And I don't know if that can last forever, but I do think it's a great, great, great starting point to build stories and keep people engaged, and also just kind of have a good mindset around when curveballs and nerfs and all that stuff are thrown at you. I like being in the space of like, oh, cool, like, yeah, they just threw something. The protocol threw something at us. Let's get in the Discord. Let's talk to people and see what everyone's strategies are and see how we can conquer it. And that I think is a huge part of what will help the game going forward, is that the community is very tight knit in their working with and against what Realm ships out, and so we're always kind of unified in this purpose together. And obviously, yeah, there'll be PvP and all that type of stuff, but right now, I think it's great that we're all kind of united and like working together to conquer whatever the team throws at us.
Right, and you're all incentivized to do that because you all want to get the maximum extractable value out of
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. So you're all going to try and pursue the most optimal strategy, so it's in your best benefit to all discuss what you're doing.
Exactly. And so how like what part of, like, since you've been in Realm a bit, like what part do you feel like you enjoy the most, or is it more just you're figuring it out right now?
Well,
What has kept you interested, or is interesting you at least enough to have 5 realms and 6 AOVs?
when you talked about Jonah, you know, that's what I understood about him as well, is that he ships, and this is a guy who's clearly driven and wants to build something, so I'm going to hold on to my realms. Now, getting back into it, I think that right now it's a lot of point and click, and I'm just trying to accumulate. So I haven't gone much more than questing and adventuring. I can see now that I can produce some collectibles with particle, but I was wondering, can are particle and anima tokens that can be traded?
So, not yet. Obviously, Jonah is on the AMM council,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like he is a part of all that. I believe so. This is the part where like there's kind of been speculation, and I believe, as far as I know, I really don't want to mess this up, but I believe particle will not be tradable, but anima will, or the other way around. So please don't hold me to that. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like every time I ask or try to figure it out, but we do know one of them will be tradable on the AMM. I assume it'll be anima, just because the production of it is a little bit more balanced, but also yeah, and there's just a lot of particle out there because it's based off natural resources, and there's a few realmers, right? Like 20 of them who are the only people playing at the start when you are growing your natural resources. So, like they have like 20,000 on a realm. So they're
Right.
farming a lot of particles. So there's thought, but most likely, yes, one of them will be on the AMM, just not sure when. There are 2 more structures coming out for Realmers to build soon, which should give utility to every single type of collectible of the 4 types that you can produce. So hopefully, once that comes out, and now there's not just, dead collectibles you can't do anything with, it kind of completes the vision, and probably will bring even more, hopefully, more stability to the economy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you talk about the AMM Council, that leads me to start thinking about, well, all these different projects have their own tokens. Are we going to see a treasure oriented or a magic oriented decks that only allows you to trade the different tokens within the magic cartridges, if you will?
Um, I believe that should be the AMM, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what they're going for. And then also, John obviously has been very big on getting like an NFT exchange where like people can like trade NFTs for each other, and propose trades and all that. So I know he's been in the Discord and like theory crafting and bridge in the treasure Discord and stuff talking about that. But I do believe so. And I mean, honestly, I very much hope that we have our own that the AMM keeps growing, because I know part of the vision is that, yes, the fees are a little bit high, but the fees are high because a lot of it goes back to the DAO and the project like that you're trading on, swapping, so that they can add more liquidity. So it's higher fees. I think it's like what, 2.5-3% per trade or something, but like
Mhm.
1+% of that, I believe, goes back into liquidity for that coin.
Got it.
As far, or do you know more? Am I right on that? Do you
I,
know?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know a lot. I haven't been following a lot of the governance. I probably should, considering my role here as the Magic Hour podcast. But
It's
I'm
so
starting to get
much, man.
it,
It's
it is
so
there's
much.
so much. There really
Yeah.
is. Like that is one of the biggest challenges in Web3 in general is just keeping up with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that uh, it's funny. I think about this, right? We're sitting here, we're talking, and we're doing this podcast, and you know, information comes at us from all directions. We read, we communicate, but at what point does spoken word become too slow for us to communicate information correctly?
Mm. Yeah.
You know,
I
we
guess. Yeah. Mm.
we have to bring in and process so much information now with Web3, and we're just like scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much more automation that needs to be developed, more of these no code tools, because you're not going to teach everybody how to use a language,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to need to be able to manipulate code in a way so that they can set up automations for themselves.
I 100%. That's something that Beamer Berries. I don't know if you heard. It was one of my like first guests on the podcast. I think it was the second or third, but Memers is like a big builder, and he's, one of the whales and the OGs of Realm. And when we had
Mhm.
on, we were talking a lot about that in relation to a game like Realm, right? And just this idea. And this is why I think Treasure can do the same thing where, like, as you build out the economy, right? And as you build out these proof of concepts, you can attract the people that know this stuff. But like an indie game developer, right? That's like a tiny studio with, say, like 15 people who's working on like a shoestring budget constantly is probably not going to come build on top of like the Realm economy right now,
Mhm.
right? Because it's too small. But say in a year, you have this proof of concept, you've done millions of magic and volume, right? Your prices have stayed stable, your burn rate stayed stable, your so and so is increasing. Why couldn't you come and build a game that has animation loops that uses Realm assets in it? But the problem is that's just not it's not possible right now. Like you said, the tools aren't there. They would need to collaborate on like direct code, right?
Mhm.
Which is very hard to do with someone else's vision, because you screw one thing up and people are going to farm your entire economy to death.
Right.
But if there's an economy that's proven it's stable and its assets are stable, just like building a business on the US dollar, right? Because it has an economy that works, that has rules, that has regulations, right? You understand how things work. You can eventually do the same. But I agree. I think we're a far way away, just because, one, the real money isn't quite there yet. The incentive is there, but you really got to be hardcore into it. And you really have to be okay, like just grinding for a really long time before you start to make money.
Mhm.
And I just don't think the accessible tools are there, but it's all coming, right? I feel like this is how every industry starts, is like a few people that are like, "Hey, I'm doing it for the love of it." And then like 10 years later everybody's like, "You're such a genius." And it's like, I still don't feel like it. I
Mhm.
just I just was in something that I thought was cool, and as it got bigger, more people migrated. But I completely, completely, completely agree with you that no code movement, the D apps. I mean, even for me, like the Trove marketplace is huge. I think about all the time, like, would Realm ship as fast if Jonah had to spend 3 to 4 months building a marketplace?
Right.
Would he be
Right.
able to ship as fast? And every time he created a new product, he couldn't just ping the Trove team and be like, "Hey, I'm releasing this collection. Can you get it added to Trove?" And they take care of it in like 30 minutes versus like a 7-hour process of making sure that your interface is relaying everything from your backend and your subgraph and all that type of stuff that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So there's trade-offs, right? Like if Magic didn't exist and Trove, I mean, what are you going to use? OpenSea? Like,
Right.
can you imagine using OpenSea to like navigate like something like Realm that has 6 collections with like a bunch of stuff in it a piece? It'd be a
Mm-hmm.
nightmare. So I think there is stuff like that happening where you can say that it's working because someone like Jonah, who is a builder, who is that indie game studio, found infrastructure that can assist him, which to me is the proof of concept for Treasure,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the AWS, it's whatever you want to call it, but they're the people that built a D app, if you will, which is a marketplace where you can list your stuff easily with analytics, with, you know, related collections, easy to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the proof of concept in a nutshell. It's just still so infant that there's just not that many people yet. Does that
Right.
make sense, or am I just
Yeah.
rambling about
No,
nothingness?
you're not
Okay.
rambling. A lot of that definitely does make sense. I think, like it's it's like people say we're still early. There's not enough people to really to get that network effect to reach that tipping point.
I mean,
Uh,
think about how far down the rabbit hole like you really have to be in like Magic. Like we
mhm.
think of it as just like, oh, this is what we do because we're on it. But like, first of all, you want to go to the first layer. You're talking like centralized exchanges, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the easiest accessible thing. Then you go to like L1. Then you go from L1 to L2. Then you go into like treasure, into like a niche like thing. Then you go into Magic, then you go into Realm, and it's like we're 7 stages down like the rabbit hole right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, like it's deep, and yeah, it's, I mean, talk about how difficult Realm is. I'm trying to explain to my friends like how you buy Magic before like all of these centralized exchanges had bridges built in on withdrawals, right? And
Right.
transfers out. Like
Right.
it was like, yeah, go to the Arbitrum bridge. It's going to cost you $40 to bridge stuff over, you know, from L1 to L2. Then you
Uh-huh.
got to
Uh-huh.
do this. Then you got to do that. And they're like, dude, I barely know how to send a Venmo transaction.
Yeah.
You know, like that just came up like 3 years ago, was like person to person Zelle, right? It's like it's 4 years old. And now you're telling me I have to take this digital money from an app to another app. But even now it's gotten easier.
It
And, but
has.
yeah, we're in the rabbit hole deep and I love it. I love
I do love
it.
it too. I mean, I'm with you. We are definitely deep. It's and when I talk to whether it's my girlfriend or to friends who are into crypto but not this deep, it still goes over their heads so quickly. It's like, but you gotta understand, like
Mhm.
it's not all like this, but
Yes.
but I think it's just, we're building something. I think we don't know exactly what we're building towards, but
Mhm.
we're building towards something big. I think we all feel that. And I think that's what keeps me going with it for sure.
And I think that's why what you do with Magic Hour, and I don't want to like sound like a narcissistic ass, but like I think that's why like podcasts are so important, is because, you know, I spent all last one at like F1 weekend.
Hmm.
And I just like all these people that like I know are like, why are you into it? It is the complex, like, yes, obviously the racing is simplistic, but like the sport is insanely complex, right? Think about trying to explain the rules of like the NFL to somebody, right?
I,
That like
I totally understand. I'm a huge baseball fan. Huge baseball fan. It is like my second love.
Mhm.
But to someone who's never seen a baseball game, they might see it as the weirdest thing they've ever seen.
Yep.
They're like, it's so boring. What do you
Well,
like
and
about
let me
this?
ask you this then. Your friends that aren't into it, right? That don't
Yeah.
understand, that don't give a crap about advanced analytics, right? And all this
Uh-huh.
stuff. How do they end up getting into baseball?
You bring them to a game. You
Exactly. You bring them to a game, you tell them stories, you show
Mhm.
them documentaries, you send them articles, right?
Right.
Maybe like me, I got into baseball because of article. I've played hockey my entire life, and I was never a baseball player, but I got into it because I love stats and analytics, and the
Right.
stories that you could tell with analytics are incredible, right? It
Oh
it
yeah.
blew everything open, and so for me, that's why I think what we do and the media outside of the game is so important. Because, yes, if you say to someone, hey, come play Realm, there's 17 different variables and paths you can play, they're going to be like, ah, shit, that's a lot of stuff. But if you're like, hey, come in a realm, like we had this prime convergence where we were tied, right? The prime convergence where you could burn a type of collectible. And at the end of the time, it decided the one with the most contributed and burned by the community was the prime collectible. So you can tell that story of like, oh, we were sitting in the Discord. There was like 40 of us there. It was tied with like 2 hours left, and everybody's waiting to see who's going to contribute. Are people going to get screwed over because they bought a bunch of realms that didn't have tech geos, so they can't make these collectibles?
Mhm.
And it was crazy, and people were talking smack. And then it was this like, people want to be a part of that. People want to be a part of stories. People can connect to stories. And that's why I think what we do is so important, because yes, it's very easy to overload people with math and overload them with results, but everybody understands a redemption story, right? A
Mhm.
climbing to the top story, a domination story, a number one, the Dodgers spending more money than anyone else and still winning the World Series, right? You're like, of
Mhm.
course that was going to happen.
But
That you
then
can
it
still
doesn't.
turn.
But then it
Exactly.
doesn't,
And then it
right?
doesn't. But and then those are both stories, right? And what
Mhm.
the fact that they did it the year before is what makes the story so great now. And the fact that a Realmer won all of this magic last month but couldn't pull it off this month, right? Why? Oh, let's talk about that. Let's share that story. Let's get their strategy. And to me, like when I was at F1, it's like I'm gonna guess there's 150,000 people there, right, for race day, 400,000 over the course of the 4 days. I'm going to guarantee you 90% of those people have no idea how the car works, right? They have no idea how the engineering works. They have no idea how fuel works, brake heat works, right? Telemetry, because you don't need to. What you need to know is that there's these crazy dudes that are, and women in the other leagues that are willing to die every time they get behind a wheel to drive super fast. And sometimes they win and sometimes they don't. And to me,
Mhm.
that Netflix series brought more people in because it wasn't about the racing or the telemetry or the stats or like whose car is porpoising more, who's closer, who's an inch lower to the ground. It's like, no, it's a fun story. Come check this out. Come check the races. And I think that's why what we do and what you do is so important, because this is the type of stuff that brings people in.
Mhm.
Math is not good. Math is going to bring some people in, but the stories, the fun, the excitement, the fact that like a year from now, there's going to be games that we're able to look back on and see how the leaderboards have changed and what people have done.
Mhm.
That's the stuff that keeps, I feel like, the industry going in between products being shipped.
I
Um,
wholeheartedly agree. I think now that you've drawn that parallel, it kind of gets me thinking about like, imagine if we had readily available statistics from Fortnite matches or Counter-Strike games or
mhm.
Overwatch, like people would love to see those stories. And there are countless games. I mean, Blizzard or Activision or Epic Games, they have that data, but they don't share it with anybody. They
Yep.
use it internally, right? And it helps them drive their business decisions. That's great. But I'm pretty sure that the gamers would love to know, or not, maybe not all of them, but enough of them would love to know the statistics so that they can draw parallels and learn better strategies and or understand what's winning and what's losing. It
Yeah.
it's the advanced analytics is what drives the change in baseball. Maybe
Mhm.
this is going to drive change in gaming.
And it does, like you said, it just does I mean, I remember watching like the Dota World Championships on like Twitch, and they're
Hmm.
like talking about how like these guys like how their strategies have evolved since they went pro 4 years ago, right? And like how their stats have gone up and like how their finger twitch responses. And it's not that that's the whole story, but it allows I still write like screenplays in my side time. Like I write stories and all this stuff, and I
Hmm.
understand that like that sense of, I guess some people call it culture, right? Or history, like that sense of what was and where we are now and how things have changed. I mean, that is a story, right? Like you have a
Right.
character who has a want, you have conflict, they come up against that conflict and they either fulfill their want by going towards it or they decide to go away from it, right? Comedy or tragedy. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, that's kind of what I believe in, is you get these stats and like, yes, no, writing an article about just advanced analytics isn't going to get a lot of readers, but using analytics and data to help give a point to your story or help give more context, that's the thing that shapes the story as a whole, that makes people want to engage, right? That keeps people interested. That why we have beat writers for news and Wall Street. I mean, people write news about Wall Street constantly, and it's really just people trading stocks and like money. There's, you know what I'm saying? But like, still, there's just news constantly because there's stories to tell and people want to
Mhm.
create stories and there's legends. And so for me, the reason I love all the realm stuff and the competition is because, yes, I can sit here and say, oh my God, this is super exciting and everybody wants to be here and this is going to be awesome. But it's better when I can say, oh, this was super exciting because 2 hours before tech and aquatic were tied, right? And then someone came in and contributed 10% more, right? Which led to this raise. And then this person did this. And it just helps paint the story that I feel like when you're editing a script or you're editing, those are the things that like you look for to how can I give less but provide a more colorful picture? And
Mhm.
that's always
Mhm.
my goal when I'm writing my script for the podcast or looking at data is like, I don't just want to parrot things. Obviously, that's part of the thing is relaying information, but how can I use this information to paint a more colorful, engaging, vivid picture where I can allow the listener's mind to run wild as well? How can they get inspired? How can they have their one area of expertise that they're like, ooh, I could apply this to Realm, to Bridge World. Ooh, I have, experience with, I don't know, making music or, talking or whatever it is. Like, ooh, I've written before, or I've done number crunching, right? I'm a financial analyst, so I can help out with this, or like Tempest. I think people like that, like you guys, honestly, the Magic Hours is the reason, like, I started Realmoor's podcast, is
Mhm.
because I heard y'all and I thought it was amazing. And I was like, well, they're doing an incredible job of covering the ecosystem as a whole. Also, more the power to them because it's going to grow at an astronomical rate.
Mhm.
Um, it's going to grow really fast. And I was like, well, they're doing that, right? They're killing it. I know how to talk. This is part of what I do. I've done groups in mental health for a long time and work in the
Mhm.
mental health space. I've directed short films. Like one of my thing I believe I'm good at is communicating with people.
Mhm.
Oh, I already sit in front of my computer most of the day. I have a microphone right here. I've kept up with Realm enough that I know how to do these things. Why not record it? If people hate it,
Right.
whatever. It happens. That's the beauty of having a pseudonym and an avatar online, right? Is you can just start something else. If people hate it, I'll stop. And if people like it, I'll keep going. It keeps me more involved. But it was y'all telling stories and interviewing these people and me listening to these creators and these builders and these other people. And I'm like, shit, I don't know how to program, but I can do something. And it
Mhm.
was because of y'all and telling these stories and this fun and engaging that I was like, you know what? Screw it. Yeah, I'm going to do it too. Why not? What am I waiting for? So just like to say thank you to you and everyone else in this podcast for like I'm sure there's a lot more people out there that have done posts and pictures and drawings and all this stuff because of y'all. So thank you in particular for the inspiration to do the Realm Wars podcast.
Hey, that makes me feel like so warm and fuzzy inside. I love hearing that. But to your point, like and I love what we do, and I hope that we grow as far as we can grow. I really appreciate what you said. I gotta say that. But when you come back, I wanted to say this before when you were talking about the telling stories and this. I don't know if you were familiar with the Anonymous story, but their mint was one of the most exciting experiences I have ever had. Period. Granted, it was Web3, but it was so new and unique, and I think that that's what really made it exciting. So
Can
the
you
way
I wasn't a part of it. Do you mind like just like describing it for like a
no,
minute
not
or
at
two?
all. So basically, how it worked was no announcement whatsoever. It was just here's a free mint. The first 2,000 are free. Okay.
Mm,
Once you get them, you can then stake them. and there's only going to ever be 10,000 of these mice. So the first 2,000 mice are free, but you can stake them, and every day one mouse will produce one cheeth, which is the native token cheeth.
Okay.
After the first 2,000 are minted, the next 2,000 can only be minted with one cheeth. So you have to have one cheeth to mint the next 2,000 mice.
Oh.
If you get a mouse that's a pretty common mouse, you can also burn the mouse to see if you can get a more rarer trait. But when you burn the mouse, you reduce the total circulating supply from 10,000 to 9,999 permanently. So it got into this kind of cat and mouse game where you had the stakers minting mice, but then you also had the burners burning mice. So as we would get to the next milestone, so after 2000 came 4000, right? So from 2000 to 4000, those mice cost one cheeth. Once we cleared 4000, it would cost two cheeth. So as we were getting closer to 4000, people would start burning their mice faster to force the people who were trying to mint at one cheeth to have to use two cheeth to mint because they weren't producing cheeth fast enough because it was being you had to stake them for a day to earn one cheeth. So if you had 10 mice, you would earn one cheeth in 2.5 hours. So it was like this back and forth where you're like, oh, do I burn? Do I, it was huge game theory, but it was really fun to be a part of and to also watch as we crept up to each milestone, more burning happened. And you were like, crap. And so now people were trading cheeth. Someone started a cheeth exchange, a liquidity pool, so that people could buy more cheeth to mint out before the next milestone was hit. And it was just back and forth. And in the end, only 3,450 mice remained out of
What?
the original 10,000 because 6,500 were burned in the process
Oh.
because people were trying to get those rare traits, which ironically makes more common traits less common because they kept getting burned. Like, but
Yep.
and this happened over an entire week. I think it was like Thursday through Sunday. This whole mint process took place. And I have to say, it was exciting and just crazy. But like the same thing, it was a story that was like unfolding, and you didn't know what was going to happen. So everybody was just like watching it and seeing what was happening. If you were in it, if you were participating, that was one thing. But if you were on the sidelines, you were like, well, is it going to go this way or is it going to go this way? Like, what do you think? Or you could buy cheeth on the market and maybe try to get a mouse. But what if you only bought 3 cheeth and then by the time you were able to mint the mouse, it was up to 4 cheeth? You're like, like you tried to get in under the gun and you missed it, kind of thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Have you found since then, have you found anything in Magic or outside of it that has brought you that same, like, I guess almost like a kid, like, like joy where you're like finding this thing for the first time and you're like, oh, this is going to be a bloodbath and I'm excited. Like,
I will say recently it was Elden Ring. Elden
okay.
Ring. I had not. I had never played any of those Souls games before, but everybody always talked about them, and they always called them the most difficult games to play. And I'm like, I don't want to beat my head against the wall for hours on end to try and beat a boss. That's not enjoyable gaming for me. I'm more of a let me consume something in a short amount of time. So I play a lot of Hearthstone. I play Fortnite and Apex Legends because I like the Battle Royale experience.
Okay.
But when I started playing Elden Ring, I was like, this feels so new and fresh and makes me feel like a kid again. I just want to consume all the time. I want to really dive into this. And the other one talking about it now, I would have to say is, and you might laugh, Fortnite does a really good job of storytelling and engaging and keeping you into the game where you want to play again because something's new, something's different. Every game is not the same. And I think that that's what's really important is the experience has to be the same but different every time.
Yes. And I think that's part of what is so hard about, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think about, I don't know if you know who he is, but there's a YouTuber called the Spiffing Brit,
No.
who basically like his job is he goes into games like Elden Ring and all this stuff, and he like exploits economic loopholes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like quantifiers and like multipliers that are clearly like bugs. So you can, like I watched him play Cyberpunk when it came out, and within like 50 minutes of playing it, he found like a gun that he could like power up through like adding all these things to like 2000% max
Mm-hmm.
damage. Right. And so I think about that a lot with like the Web3 is like his thing is like he exploits economic loopholes, right? To where you can basically do whatever you want in the game. Problem is, if that happens in Web3, you've just destroyed an entire liquidity protocol.
Right.
Right. And so I feel like that's what's hard about it. And that's why I love something like Realm and these things, because they're building the proof of concept economy, right? Which is that I can create something that has it's not born of anything physical, yet it has value because a community says it does. And that's why I think John Patton is so big on community, is because the community trading treasure is the only thing that gives it value right now. Right? Like
Right.
that's literally it. Like you say, it said if there's no one to buy your coin, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so
But I think that
I
that's also the value in Web3 is
mm,
it's creating communities. It's flattening everything. When it's no longer a hierarchy, it's just a community of people. And sure, someone
yes.
might have more of a certain token or NFT than others, but you're all one community. And you now become this unit where all the participants within this unit are aligned on the same goal, which is we have to make sure that this maintains value or it's worthless for all of us.
I no, I completely agree. Do you feel that from the treasure community?
I absolutely do. I think that there's definitely a huge community here that doesn't necessarily exist elsewhere in Web3. Of course, there are pockets. Some of the ones that come to mind for me are like art blocks. I think
Mm,
that what Farouk is doing with the Rug Radio thing is really good. The guy Tom Sachs, I don't know if you know him, he's a designer. He designs
that's
Nike. He has the Rocket Tom Sachs Rocket Factory. I think there's definitely a lot of community there.
mm,
Ether Orcs has a huge community.
mm,
I wouldn't say bigger than Treasure by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a lot of community there too. There are a lot of people playing their game. But there are so many that, I mean, you know, nothing right now compares to Bored Apes, or Azuki's, or, I mean, and then Reddit just came in and just smashed them all, right?
yep.
But I
Yep.
also think that the Reddit thing remains to be seen. I think they've done a good job so far, but let's see where they can take it from here. Because part of that too is I've always felt that as great as Treasure can be, and I think that people are building fantastic games. As
Mm,
soon as one of these big game players, and I mean like the Epic Games or the Steam or Blizzard, as soon as they can get into Web3 with their IPs
mm.
in some sort of way, I think that they are going to see otherworldly type of interactions. And I think that it's going to be a game changer for sure.
And that's kind of I 100% agree. I'm really interested to see how it looks, and that's part of the reason I am so bullish on something like Treasure
Mm-hmm.
is because I believe when these companies decide that they need to get into real Web3, not like releasing NFT skins that can only be
Mm-hmm.
traded inside their marketplace, but like real, my opinion is they're either going to need to hire somebody or they're going to need to find a protocol to build on top of. They're going to need consultants, someone with data, most likely,
Right.
the researchers, right, about how all this works. Or it'll just be easiest to be like, listen, man, we're not developing this infrastructure. We're just going to build on top. We're going to use our IP, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to build I don't know, a World of Warcraft game on top of Realm,
Right.
right? So, like, it'll be, and that's why I'm so excited is because I mean, yes, a lot of small companies are going to get shit on for doing a lot of the research at this point, if you want to call it that, like the
Mm-hmm.
actual proof of concept. But my belief is that like when a lot of these companies get in, they're going to go to the people that already have proof of concept in it, right?
Right.
Versus like developing your own blockchain section for $50 million, right? I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, guys like Bezos and JP Morgan and all them can do it, but my hope is that they will lean towards companies that have already been in it because it is NFTs. I mean, Magic won't have any ownership. If you build WoW on top of Magic, all that happens is that you use Magic as a currency. Treasure doesn't, the NFT and ownership can still be a little bit separate. It can work within it. I mean, it might just be delusional and not enough understanding on my part. But my hope is that, as opposed to you can be a huge company as opposed to building your own cloud, right? You just go on an AWS because you're like, I don't want to build my own servers. I don't want to do
Right.
this. You release your app on the Apple marketplace as opposed to being like Signal, where you have to go to their website and download it,
Mhm.
right? Instead, you release on the Apple marketplace because it's easier, it's more vision, more people are there. And so that's what I'm kind of hoping happens with Treasure. And I think that's going to be a big part for JP and the C-suite and executive team. And I think they're already doing that, which is like you said, with Ruffian Reborn, with the Beacon, with all these different games, is like someone needs to go out and get the builders, because the more builders you attract, you're eventually going to attract the big fish as well, right? Just like any startup. So that is my hope, that when they decide like, hey, we want to get in, that they're looking at places like Treasure, but also on the other end, Starbucks is going on a Polygon,
Yep.
and Starbucks is the OG of digital wallets. I mean, they did it before Apple, they did it before Google. They
Mhm.
were the first people, right, to really have that value proposition of like, hey, you give us money in the app and we give you coffee. You don't own money anymore. You own Starbucks coffee because that's all you can redeem it for.
Right.
And
I
I'm
love that
really
I've
interested to
loved that
see.
we've gone into this direction because I think that this is the end game. What we're talking about now, this is the end game
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna have Starbucks points, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you can trade your Starbucks points on a DEX, game over. Because then you're gonna have McDonald's points, and you're gonna have Burger King points, and you're gonna have Best Buy points, and you're gonna have mobile points, and you're just
Holy
gonna be
shit.
able
I
to
didn't even
trade.
think about it like that. Damn.
You're gonna be able to trade all your points for all your points. But wait, this is Web 3 we're talking about. So I have Starbucks points. What if I could stake my Starbucks points in Starbucks and earn yield from Starbucks?
Jesus. Oh yeah, that is the end game. Damn. Yeah, I didn't even think about like the interoperability, I guess, of like, yeah, being able to trade points against points, and basically create all of these economies,
Right.
out
It's
of
all
these.
gonna yeah,
Yeah.
they're all gonna be economies, and then what's gonna happen is you're gonna go to the store and you're gonna buy something. And the storekeeper's going to be like, well, that's 15 US dollars. And you'd be like, well, I'm going to play with crypto. But you may not have 15 US dollars, but you might have 15 US dollars worth of Starbucks points and this, that, and the other thing. So when you pay, it's just going to, in the background, take whatever your currencies you're using to pay, push them through the exchange to get USDC and give it the USDC to the shopkeeper.
Yes. Yes.
So you're not
Man.
even going to have to worry about what token you have.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, no, I guess I didn't even think about it that deep, because I've also, I mean, if we're talking end game and we just want to go there, my one of my really good friends works in the shipping and logistics industry
Mm-hmm.
for a massive private company here, $2 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
And their CEO is already like, yes, we will be using blockchain. It will be a
Mm-hmm.
part, because right now it's like the mortgage industry where you have to fax a single paper back and forth because anything online, you can't hold it to the letter of the law, right?
Right.
It's not verified. And so and basically what his CEO said is that a lot of the big freight shippers, like the international, the big boats, they already use it, private ones.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
it's
they
just
have
too.
internal blockchains.
Exactly. And he's like, we will go to blockchains. It's just too expensive right now. And there's no government support or like regulation. So, like, no one's going to take that risk in small business. But he's like, yes, as soon as the technology becomes affordable, like NFTs and blockchain will be used for everything you ship in the entire world because it's the
Yeah,
easiest way to do it.
it
And I'm
is.
just like, holy shit.
But But he's right because it takes a lot of, forgive me for saying so, human error out of these supply chains. It
Mm-hmm.
it almost streamlines it to the point where you know the data is going to go from one end to the other without any hiccups along the path.
Yep.
I mean,
It,
I come from the restaurant industry, and I see like I see value in this all the time, and I'm just like, I wish it would get here already.
yeah. Yeah, me too. I just, it was interesting. There's a thing here called Nerd Night where it's just like people apply to speak on topics. And it was this guy who runs this sensory art lab here, right? They do
Mhm.
a lot of art based on sensors. And he showed this graph, and I've not been able to find it was from a book. I wrote it down, but I think I wrote it down wrong. But essentially, we see this mass adoption curve hit in technology right around the time that the technology gets cheap enough for artists to experiment with it.
Mhm.
Right? When artists start doing experiments is usually the point you see mass adoption because it coincides with it being affordable enough that artists can screw around with it without a financial burden to themselves. And
Right.
so that's even when I was talking to Memer Berries, he was saying that that's what he thinks is going to happen with this next wave of NFTs, digital collectibles, Web3, is
Mhm.
going to be where we see the cost start to downturn. So woman that is a artist, right, can come and do NFTs relatively easily. Someone that's a video game designer or an abstract artist can really do these crazy, crazy experiments. And maybe, honestly, now that I'm talking about it, maybe that's part of what led to the boom. And maybe now we're on the down cycle of that a bit.
Mm.
Maybe that was part of the NFT boom, but it was really interesting and framed a lot of perspective around because I think maybe NFTs are, but I don't think blockchain is cheap enough yet for people to do crazy stuff with it.
I
Whether like
agree with
building
you.
one for these weird things. And so it's going to be really exciting to see that.
Yeah. Well, the other side of it is too, like, I think to your point, this whole AI art movement that's kind of starting to
Mm.
happen almost like very quickly, right? Because I was watching something the other day. Someone was like, you're basically going to be able to produce an entire movie just by typing prompts into an AI. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's crazy. But to your point, it's gotten cheap enough that now artists can start screwing around with it.
Well,
So
and
I think,
for Realm, like all of the AOVs are done by an artist,
mhm,
GBS, and Jonah just announced they brought on one more artist. He just hasn't announced who it is yet, but
right,
everything else in there is AI generated.
right.
Like all of the geo features, the pictures you see, all of that is I believe that one that Treasure put up starts with a D. AI, I believe that's what I believe Jonah uses
Dally,
for. Yes, I believe that's what Jonah uses to generate all, and they're stunning, man. They fit so well
they
with like
do.
what all of us had imagined. It's absolutely beautiful, and I get it, right? Like, yes, obviously, if you can have hand drawn art all the time by one person, that's great. But if you're trying to scale something and save money and deliver the product you want, then yeah, you need to save money and man hours where you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh man, I feel like I didn't really talk that much about the podcast. I
Well,
can just
that's
ramble.
okay. No, no, no. I think this was really, really great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope to have you on again. I think having this conversation with you has given me some tips for what I need to include in my future podcasts. Just like, I think I want to do more discussion about, governance proposals that are coming down the pike. I want to be able to give more information to the participants in the treasure community because I
Mm.
think that we've been doing a good job so far, but there's certainly more that we can give. So definitely want to do that. But people can find you on Spotify, right? Realmoor is with
Yeah,
two O's, right?
yeah, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Apple. If you go to Realmoors Pod on Twitter or at Pod of Realmoors because the tag for Realm is Realm at Realmverse, so I didn't want to have another at Realm
Right.
to start. So it is the Pod of Realmoors. I am on Spotify, Twitter. You can go to The link in my bio has the link for everything. Come into the Realm Discord. I'm always hanging out in there. Come ask questions, friend request me, DM me. There's a link to my email that I set up in like the link tree as well. I mean, I'm always around. I'm not always the best at responding to messages, but I try as much as I can. But yeah, if anyone ever has any questions, comments, concerns, I feel like I make this better. Kind of what you said. I talk to people, have guests on, like even some of the stuff you said, right, has me thinking about like things I want to do and more storytelling and bringing a little bit more energy and I guess a little bit more of like a sports, a sports play by play, like a little bit more energy and a little bit more umph and tell some more stories. And so
Hmm.
the only way I find a way to be better is by people telling me, people providing constructive feedback. So I'm always open to that.
Awesome.
And yes, I would love to come back on anytime to talk about the podcast, to talk about Realm. I'm happy to have a more centralized like conversation where I just answer questions, but I keep up enough that I'm happy to just come on here and talk shit anytime as well.
Hey, that's cool too. Oh, by the way, don't look now, but F is pumping. Jeez.
Oh,
Did you
really?
notice that? Yeah, it's almost at 1600.
What is happening?
I don't know. I guess maybe some good stuff is coming.
Let's
But
hope.
before we retire, because I know we've been talking for a while, which is fine. Aside from Realm, what other treasure games are you playing, or Web3 games are you playing, or is Realm it, and this is where your focus lies?
No, so I'll be honest, like I have a lot of holdings for like coins outside
Hmm.
of the treasure and ecosystem, but most of those like, are the big dogs, the L1s, the layer zeros, like some of the L2s.
Right.
Just mostly staking.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But in terms of treasure, I will say I'm not in Bridge World. I do love it. I do keep up with it. I think it's awesome. It just kind of was one of those things that like I think it was just the fact that I had like chance to buy like new rares when they were like 800 magic and I
Hmm.
just didn't, and now I have my recruit and I do all that. I keep up with people that do, but I've been enjoying Toadstools a little bit. I mean, I like the music. Like, I think
The
the
music is
potential is
really
there.
good.
I have no idea what I'm doing with the house thing. I got my blueprint. I have my
Hmm.
5 pieces of rare wood, 5 pieces of bufo wood. I want to build a house. I'm also very, very Tales of Alaria. I will say, like, I want to get into it, and it's not, I do know it's complicated, but for me, it's just the fact that like I don't know if I have time to like play like a Civ 6 and a Total War. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
two like deep strategy games. I
Right.
am in Small Brains. I was really excited for Copium Wars for a long time. I hope that's still going to happen. I'm in Small Love. I'm married two of my smalls. I'm in Smithy Dow, Smoo Lips. I am excited for hoping that small snack shop. I interviewed them on the Treasure Community Series
Hmm.
and I really
Hmm.
like what they had to say. Hoping we see some enjoyers at some point. Don't know
Right.
what's don't know what's going to happen with that. I'm in Battlefly, and I am very excited. I was able to. I won a whitelist spot for the beacon, like through the Small Brains Discord.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very excited about that. Rufian. But my biggest thing that I would say I'm involved in every day is Realm, especially now, Jonah took the cooldowns off of buildings, so you can go in there and do stuff every day if you wanted to.
Mhm.
So I'm enjoying that, but yeah, I'm in Small Sharks and I'm excited. Not Shogun, but Lost Samurai is just bridged to L2.
Yeah, I saw that.
So hopefully that's gonna get up and going soon. I have mushrooms from a long time ago. I got my seeds still. I got my 2 imbued souls still, maybe undervalued, not really sure. So and then Arcane as well. I don't know if you heard of that. They're a small project that was by this artist builder named Mist who has like 15 years of like Unity dev work
Yeah, I
and stuff
I
like
actually
that.
had so we did an episode with Mist on Arcane probably a couple months.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, I like Mist. Again, I am bullish on anybody that can show that they at least have the qualifications to know what they're doing. Maybe they can't execute, but in my opinion, the industry doesn't have enough execution yet for you to base your investments and decision off of someone's pure execution track record.
Right.
There just hasn't been enough. I mean, obviously with John Patton, something that attracted me is that he had already been doing osmosis, right?
Mhm.
As head of development, which had already proven itself to be successful and is still proving itself to be successful.
Right.
So that was nice, but I'm always bullish on anyone like that has good background experience, but also engages with the community consistently because you can only do that for so long before you just start doing work, you know?
Yep.
Like it's eventually you're just like I keep talking to these people all day, like with Realm, right? Like I'm talking to these guys all day anyways. Might as well build something.
Hmm. Absolutely.
What about you? Before just to ask you real quick,
So,
what else are you involved in?
I mean, I went really hard in August of 2021, probably through the end of the year. And I think over the last 8 months or so, I've kind of like slowed down. So, I mean, I'm still in Realm and Bridge World, and I have a Life DAO imbued soul. So I think I'm gonna be part of the Beacon too. We actually are bringing on Ruffian Reborn and the Beacon in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for
Awesome.
episodes with those guys. But also, I still have my Anonymice. I I think I mentioned Ether Orcs. I have an Azuki and a couple beans. I have an other deed for the other side. I think what I'm really interested in is where these metaverses go. No one is aside from Meta, no one has really built a virtual, well, that's not true because we have Decentraland and Sandbox,
Mm.
but no one has really built a clear-cut virtual world that people are going in. I think there needs to be a tech leap there too, because I think that when we start getting these AR or VR glasses, I think we're going to see a lot of this kind of, and maybe, calling back to what we discussed earlier, maybe that's the tech that needs to drop in price
Mm.
because I want to see where everything goes with when things can go virtual because we talk about our assets are real, we own them, we can take them wherever we go. What does that look like when we get into a Ready Player One situation? You know,
Yes.
can my Ether Orcs play with my Adventurers of the Void and my Legions and my Azukis all in one same metaverse? And what traits are they allowed to keep and what traits, like I have an artifact sneaker, right? A Nike sneaker, right?
Mm.
What does that mean? Is how important is that going to be in the metaverse? We don't know the answer to that yet. But, like that's really where my focus is. I'm just kind of like accumulating and seeing, like cultural start of what's the word?
Like a new technological revolution kind of, or like a
Yeah.
new, I mean, even for me it's just it's another way. Like I get with VR like the video games and stuff, but for me it's always been like just the possibilities for education, right? Like think about like you're in class and it's like, hey, we're studying Rome today, let's walk through the Roman Colosseum, you know, and it's and
Mhm.
you that's like, and then you take it into games, right? And I do agree that technology, I do have friends that actually like work in that technology, and it will be tough just because the semiconductors required to build VR headsets are insanely expensive, and they're only made by like a few companies right now. So that will always be interesting, but I'm right there with you. I think when VR does become a thing, when it becomes cheaper, when it becomes more normalized, like how the generation before us could not conceptualize using a phone for everything and staring at it and getting all your information from it. And why would you want to stare at a light all day, right? To get everything, I think as it becomes more normalized, then yes, we'll see that. And it is going to be insane. And I'm very excited for it.
I I'll leave you with this. I just recently saw Neil deGrasse Tyson speak, and because he released a new book where he
Mm.
kind of applies scientific concepts to politics, but that's not where I'm going with this. One of the things he talked about was we can't predict the world we will live in 30 years from now. And the analogy he used was if you look at a picture from like 1904 New York City, all you see is horses and carriages.
Mm.
Within 10 years, there's not one horse on those streets
Oh.
because the car changed the game. And in the same way, what was it, 1990, whatever, or maybe it was even 2000 when the iPhone was launched. Right now, you can't think of not having an iPhone or an Android, or we all have mini computers in our hands now. When we thought it was a possibility at some point. We thought we might wear them on our wrists, which I mean we kind of do now with the watches,
Yeah.
but like we didn't think it would come that fast and that quickly, and yet it did. And so who knows what this tech will bring? Who knows where we go from there? But clearly, and unless something really crazy changes, to me, blockchains aren't going anywhere, and they are the future, and they're going to be part of this whole change in tech, whatever that looks like, as far as I'm concerned. But
And I completely agree with you, and that's part of the reason I've always been bullish on Treasure, is because at the end of the day, you want to make a lot of money really quickly, like you need to build something flashy. But you want to make a lot of money for a long time and have stable, you got to be involved in the infrastructure, and there's no way around it, right? Like if you really want to last, you want to be a kingmaker, like and the big name in an industry, you have to be involved in some sort of infrastructure, because you have to be the person that other people pay to use.
right,
And that's part of the reason I'm so bullish on Treasure, and even Realm. I see Realm as a framework, as an infrastructure for a future economy, the same way Realm built on top of the economy of Treasure, right? It's like Treasure's kind of the layer 0 in a sense, and Realm, or a layer 1, and Realm is a layer 2. And someone will most likely come and build a layer 3 on top of that, and I am here for it, and I'm very excited, very bullish on Treasure.
I think the layer 3 piece is gonna just marry all the layer 2s to make them seamless.
Oh man, it's just crazy that we're like watching all this happen
Right.
in real time. But because it's real time, it's like, it's like watching yourself lose weight, right? You like, because you look in the mirror every day, you don't really see it. And then maybe you see a picture of yourself from before, right? Or you see a picture, you look good, and you're like, damn, I lost a lot of weight.
Right.
Right. But because you look at yourself constantly and every day, it's hard to see the minute changes. But like if you look back a year, Treasure was literally white words on a black NFT like screen, and that was it. Like there,
Right.
and now they have like a marketplace and like 20 employees and a Discord with 40,000 people. And it's like, it's beautiful. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, if as a business you're managing your bottom line to keep enough runway for you, which it seems like they're doing with what they had in the acquisition, the 3 point or the raise they did.
Yeah.
They're watching their bottom line. They're keeping in touch with their community, and they're building the infrastructure. For that, like I can't really ask for anything else in like a new emerging market. Like just the fact that you're building and you're communicating, that's going to be enough for me right now, because I mean, all this technology is being invented in real time. It's kind of hard to ask someone like, hey, can you ship this faster? And they're like, well, it doesn't exist. So like, give us a second.
Right.
Like we're figuring this out as y'all are. And so I'm super, super excited for what's to come.
Me too, man. This was a wonderful time. I really enjoyed this.
Me too. And I enjoy man, this podcast was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, anytime you want to talk about Realm, or you just want to have me on to shoot the shit, I'm always, always, always game. Thank you to you and the podcast so much for having me on. This was awesome, and yeah, I'd love to do it again.
And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.